Now it's time for our newspaper review. What's making headlines around the world? Well, let's take a look. The Wall Street Journal Asia edition leads with the discovery of as many as 50 dead bodies in the back of a truck in Austria. And it's pictured here that forensic teams are at the rear of the vehicle. It's thought it may have been abandoned by a people smuggling gang. The same paper also reports on the higher than expected US economic growth in the second quarter. The Guardian raises questions about the UK government's Fit for Work assessment system, as it reveals nearly 90 people a month are dying within 14 days of having been declared fit for work. The Financial Times says Google is preparing for an extended legal battle with the EU over the way it ranks and displays search results. The International New York Times shows a picture of a man outside a heavily protected government building in the Lebanese capital, Beirut. The city has been the scene of protests over failure to collect rubbish, which is piling up in the streets. And the Daily Telegraph leads with the image of the rise, then fall of Usain Bolt. After his thrilling 200-meter swim, the champ is floored by a cameraman. Well, we'll get to that later, but first joining us is author and business mentor David Carter. David, good morning. Thanks for joining me. So, I guess we're starting with this migrant crisis, and we've been reporting overnight that the 2 boats off the coast of Libya have capsized, hundreds of people dead. But yesterday we had a look at the overland routes, that migrants are traveling overland as well, and this horrific find of them being found dead in this truck. I mean, are the countries involved doing enough to stop this crisis?
Well, it is a crisis, and I think that we've only just seen the beginning of it. And it's obvious where we want, on the one hand, an EU without borders and ever closer union, where it's so easy to travel from one country to another with no passport or identification, that with such an open border policy, it's easy to get in. And I also think that we need to look very carefully at the people traffickers. I mean, if people land in Italy or Greece on a boat and suddenly find themselves in Calais, they don't have sat-nav or anything else that's an easy guide to get there. They're being trafficked there. And I think we need to really investigate who are the companies and the individuals behind this huge volume of human trafficking to get people, either to Germany or across to Calais. I think that this is a very horrible story. It's another symptom of a massive problem, though. And until the EU really deals with its own border issues and the cause of the people leaving all these other countries around Africa to come to Europe, we're just going to see this for years and years to come.
Yes, as you say, we have to look at who these people are. Many of them are people looking for a better life, but then also many of them are fleeing war, which is why they're taking such horrific risks, yes. Getting trapped in trucks and suffocating in the bottom of boats.
No, we need to look at all aspects of it. We need to look at the cause, why they're wanting to flee their own countries, but we also need to look at what happens when they flee their own country. And earlier on in the week, Germany was saying, well, it's unfair that we have an excessive burden of people arriving in Germany. Well, of course, there's 20 plus countries in Europe. They could, in theory, go anywhere, settle there, and then relocate anywhere in Europe with our borderless system. But they want to go to Germany because, I think it was in Bonnie and Clyde where someone asked why they robbed the banks, and the answer was because that's where the money is. And so people are migrating to the countries where there are jobs, where there's employment, where there's benefits. And so Germany can't turn around and say, well, we actually need to distribute these people around the other 20 countries. They're hardly likely to go back to Italy or Greece in particular at the moment.
Yeah, Germany's saying it's expecting about 800,000 migrants. No easy solution to this.
I think that's the tip of the iceberg over the next 20 years, unless we don't look at the much bigger, broader picture of why the wars and the famine and all the things that are causing people to want to flee their own countries, how we can deal with those as well.
Yeah, no easy solution to this. But let's move on to some economic news now. And the US growth rate has revised to a higher rate. That's the Wall Street Journal again. But these figures are only until June, aren't they? So they're not taking into account the massive turmoil in the markets that we've been seeing this week.
I can't remember who it was, but who said it, but there's a great quote, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics. And I'm not sure if these statistics actually tell us anything at all. You're quite right that this talks about the quarter ended in June. There was a poor first quarter, a much better second quarter, so over the first half, an okay, growth in the first half. However, if this repeats the pattern of 2014, there was the same pattern then, poor first quarter, good second quarter, modest, overall an okay growth year. But the point is, we also read in the news this week about the turmoil in the markets and in the economy in Brazil and in China, of course, which has been everywhere this week. And I think we need to understand the interconnectedness of all of these markets around the world. So they're all completely interlinked. And so we need to think not about the statistics in one particular country, because it's irrelevant without understanding the global GDP, the global market.
Yeah, indeed. We're all interlinked, aren't we? There's no country that stands in isolation, and China and the US, two very interlinked economies. But let's go to some more local news now. And The Guardian, it's reporting benefit deaths fuel alarm over the welfare regime. I mean, this seems pretty extraordinary to me that nearly 90 people a month are dying after being declared fit for work.
Yes, I'm not sure that there's a cause and an effect there, though. They didn't die because they were assessed and as being fit for work, and I think that it's a rather alarming way to portray the figures. I mean, it says here that there was widespread acceptance amongst campaigners that the data presented should be treated with caution, and only revealed the number of people who died, not the details of deaths. And also, it doesn't talk about what a percentage of the people, 90 people, is it 0.1%? In which case it's probably a normal death rate. Yeah,
but this fit for work assessment process, it's been dogged by controversy for several years, hasn't it?
Well, it was started by the Labour government, now being described by Andy Burnham as being a punishing regime. But I think that for the last 5 years, a company called Maximus had this this process outsourced to them, and there has been a lot of controversy, I think, about how they've handled the scheme. And 4 out of 10 people who appealed the decision by Maximus won their appeal. And I think there's been particular concerns about the mentally ill and disabled people. But a new company now, Atos, has taken over. I don't think there's any disagreement about the spirit or the intention of the policy, that people on benefits for a long period of time should be assessed thoroughly, and if they are cheating the system, should go back to work. I don't think there's any dispute about that. I think this is all about the implementation of that strategy, and perhaps this new company, Atos, is going to get it more right than the company they replace.
Yeah, it does seem like something needs to be done about that. But let's move on to the Financial Times and Google, who's about to start this protracted legal battle with the US. I mean, I think President Obama
with the EU.
Sorry, my point is the US is concerned about this, isn't it? President Obama warned them about protectionism, didn't he?
Yes, but of course he's only protecting the US and Silicon Valley's interests, so ha ha ha.
But Google does own 90% of the market share in Europe, which is quite a large chunk.
Yes, and President Obama's clearly being protectionist for his Silicon Valley, IT tech companies, and the EU is trying to protect its own. I thought it was hilarious that people close to Google added that it would be difficult technically to ensure that its algorithms treated all services in all sectors equally.
Unfortunately, that is all the time we have left. We've plenty to talk about, but thanks for joining us on BBC World News.